So we're going to open it up now for Q&A. I'm going to change my goggles so I can see you. So, yes, any questions are welcome, but preferably something to do with the book. Tangential at least. So, fire away. Yes.
What was it like meeting Burroughs?
Scary. I mean, I've been a Burroughs aficionado since I was 15 and read everything I could get my hands on, understood half of it, read every interview because I've always found his interviews really fascinating. And the way I met Burroughs, and I don't know if you've read this in the book, but it was my first attempt at some practical magic, because I was also, as well as reading about Burroughs, I was reading about magic and about a process which is known as the sigil magic, where you write down a desire as simple as possible, just one sentence, and then you extract any letters that occur more than once, and you discard the others, and with those letters you make a symbol that represents your desire. You memorize it, you set fire to it, and you let it go out into the universe. And my first attempt at this was, I want to meet William Burroughs. And then a few months later, out of the blue, I get an invite to go to Toronto to perform at what was billed as his 70th birthday party. But it was a spoken word event in a beautiful theatre. Jim Carroll was on the bill, and John Giorno and Mr. Burroughs. And I can't say that it was not intimidating, but he was very gentlemanly, and he received us with good grace. And then I met him later on. I visited his place in Lawrence, Kansas, and that concluded with a snake hunt. He took me on a snake. I had his stick, 2 prongs, and you catch the snakes. There's poisonous snakes because he was protecting his cats. He had all these cats. And he would put them in cages and study them and adore them. He loved snakes. And then release them into the woods. And just before I left, because I had to get my skates on to go and get the plane, because we were on tour, it's the London Rockets tour. The local newspaper came to the door, so he goes over, picks it up, opens up the front page, and he reads it out loud. It was, "Anti-drugs crusader, gun down, peel me an onion and I'll cry." So that was a great parting note. So yes, any more? Yes.
Is that about the type of mic stand that Peter hit you in the head with on stage? About that heft?
That is exactly. Yes, the blunt instrument that caused a lot of damage. Yeah, knocked me out cold. Because he would do this thing. Hey, you're scared now, right? You know. That's pretty damn heavy. Right in the face, smashed my glasses. I was that cold. Whoa. I then carried up to Magazine's dressing room because we were on tour with them. They kindly vacated the dressing room, but as I was going up the stairs, they were passing in it, and I was hearing these comments just sort of coming round. Fucking hell! Look at the state of him. I'm just like, wow. And I get up there and I lie on this table, and I could feel this cartoon-like bump actually getting bigger. Anyway, I had a cold compress on it, and eventually went back down to our dressing room. The culprit was in the room, and not a word of sympathy. Not one iota, which actually hurt more than the bang on the head, to be honest. But yeah, it's one of those. Lethal, in the wrong hands, dangerous weapon. Yes. Yes.
Did you have friends and acquaintances help you with your memories in the book writing process? Like, was Kevin there helping you remember getting your facts straight?
Kevin was No, Kevin was definitely not there. Nobody was there. It was just me in a room on my own. I do my own office hours, which were, I start at noon and then write for 2 hours, then have a break, and then resume for another hour, then have a stiff drink. But it was, what I drew on were all my diaries and journals that I kept since 1980, and some of which were quite detailed, especially the conversations, which I'd written down verbatim at the time. You know, if I found them amusing or ridiculous or worthy of notation. So I had all that to draw on. And I had a wonderful timeline that was put together by a friend of mine, Andrew Brooksbank, who's kind of like a super fan. He's written a book about Dallas as well, called Beneath the Mask. But that was very, very detailed. Every radio session, every gig, what I had in my sandwich, you know, was caught on a Thursday in 1985. That was pretty scary, but very detailed and invaluable. So those were my little stepping stones to retread that treacherous path. Yes, sir.
I'm wondering if you when you look back on like various experiments and recording sessions and things like that, do you have like moments of innovation or experiment where you kind of finally look back on like how exciting it was to make that sound or this sound or those kinds of moments of creation?
Yeah, my recollection of those moments comes back vividly.
Right.
And it's actually, I mean, if I just play the record, I can recall pretty much where I was standing in the studio, and if it was down to a particular sound that was quite often, we would get an effects unit, and that would be the spark for a new song. I mean, certainly with Bela Lugosi, that echo unit, the delay unit they had in the studio, became an integral part of that record. And we didn't even know that thing was there, you know. It was just on the spur of the moment. And for example, there's a track, Double Dare, which is very sort of bass heavy, and the bass is very heavily distorted. And that was a little, very cheap Japanese fuzz box that I had. It was the first time I used it. And just something about that particular sound. If I hadn't had that box, I don't think that track would exist, certainly not in the form that it does. You know? So yes, it's all there.
On that same album, there's some sort of kind of like vocal recordings, almost like dictaphone sounds. Do you remember what I'm talking about? Sort of in like small talk stings, for example.
Oh, okay, yeah.
What was?
We fed the vocals through that same fuzz box.
Oh, okay.
So it was a useful little item, good little toy.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then it just sort of rolled all the bass off. Yeah.
Right, thanks.
Yes.
David, can you talk a little bit about the Edie Sedgwick play and your other writing?
Sure. Yeah, well, I've been writing for the stage, and these are multimedia productions in that they incorporate everything from music, obviously, the drama aspect, buto, projections, film, a little bit of macabre dance. And but I find that platform very appealing because it is so broad, and it just allows you to really let your imagination loose. And the one that our host is referring to, the Edie Sedgwick play, was called Silver for Gold, the Odyssey of Edie Sedgwick, and that told the story of Andy Warhol's troubled muse, but in terms of Greek mythology. So she was living out the myth of Persephone. It was about her journey into the underworld, which was the silver factory, and Andy was Hades, and Bob Dylan was Orpheus. The three-headed dog, Cerberus, that guards the gates, the underworld. The three heads were three acolytes of Andes: Chuck Wine, Ondine, and Paul Morrissey. So that all plays in. It's a mythic story, but most stories are mythic if you care to investigate deep enough. And it's certainly an area that I'm going to continue to develop, and also writing screenplays, which I've co-written. I've co-written 5, and the latest one is about Henry Miller and his time up in Big Sur. It's called Bohemia, and that, of all the ones that we've written so far, the writing partner, Don C. Tyler, that one's getting some action. There's a, I don't know, there's a flickering amber there, which we're hoping will soon turn to a green. One thing I have learned in working in the film industry, you have to be bloody patient, even more patient than you were waiting for us to set up. So everything has to go on, like on the back burner, you know. But that's fine for me because I've got all these other plates spinning on sticks, you know. So that's fine. Back burner's fine. Yeah. And it was interesting that writing the screenplays, I really think it came into play when I was writing the book, because some of it's quite cinematic. And I know that I was looking at, these were events that happened that I remembered quite clearly, but not that I consciously did it, but reading back, it reads like a screenplay, like a directive, you know, scene setter. So, yeah, I think that definitely comes into play.
Career, which album was the most fun to create, and which one are you most proud of?
That's very hard. We had a fun time, Love and Rockets, making an album called Hot Trip to Heaven, because that was very much moving away from the conventional and really putting ourselves on the spot. We went to the studio without any preparation, and I relish that edge. And it was pretty inspiring, that experience. And also, we were at a certain level where things were really building. We just had like a number 2 hit single here in the States, and we were signed to RCA, and there was a lot of money being thrown our way. The record label wanted us to go on and become a big guitar-oriented rock and roll band and play in stadiums, basically. And then we made this weird record, you know, with no guitars, and loops and backward stuff and instrumentals that lasted 12 minutes, you know. And we employed Brian Eno's oblique strategy cards, which are, it's a set of cards that have, each card has one line on it, and the idea is that you take a card at random and you interpret it in the moment, and then you apply that to whatever you're working on. So it could be things like consider thy error as hidden intention, which I love, or like you are an engineer, or take the most embarrassing detail and exaggerate it, stuff like that. So we were applying this kind of surrealistic, random process. RCA loved it. And let us go, I think, is the wrong way of putting it. They gave us the option. They said, we're going to give you the option of leaving the label. So we played the record to Rick Rubin, and he loved it, and consequently signed us to his label, American Recordings. So that was real fun.
And what are you most proud of?
That's even harder. That's very hard. I don't know how to answer that. And I never really think about it, and I don't dwell on it. I mean, I just make the work, and then I move on. And I don't know. It's usually like the last thing I did, you know. Yeah, so the last album was an album called An Eclipse of Ships. And that was recorded very quickly and with a great bunch of musicians in LA. And it turned out really well. So at the moment it's that one. Until the next one comes along. Any more?
After one more, anybody else? Wait on. No, not so much.
I actually just saw, this is so funny, I just came in here and you were here, which is so amazing because I love Bauhaus, House, but I just actually saw Peter Murphy a couple months ago, and he could not be any opposite from you, which is kind of what you expect from Peter Murphy. He makes you wait an hour, and then you go, you're waiting for hours, and then he goes and everyone and crosses out all the hits that you wanted to play in front of everyone, and just thank you, just totally like exactly what you would expect. How was it working? You seem so gregarious and personable and wonderful, and it just seems like, not to say I'm sure he has his good qualities, but how was it in a band with somebody who just seems the polar opposite of all those inclusive qualities that you seem to possess? In my little bit of knowledge of what I've gleaned from these 2 interviews, I couldn't expect anything different from what I experienced in concert with him. So
if you read the book, dear, you'll know.
I didn't know there was a book. I just got here, but I'm gonna read it.
Peter can be the soul of charm.
I'm sure.
And there's another side to that coin. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. But I'm looking forward to the book.
Good.
One more?
So speaking of which, she opened the Pandora's box. Did
Right.
you tell these guys you were writing the book? Like did you let
No.
them know? Or they
I
had
told
no idea?
my brother in confidence, and then a week later he goes and spills the beans to Daniel.
Oh.
And apparently Daniel was not that enamoured of the idea. I think his reaction was, why is he going to drag up all that old shit again? But I've sent a copy to Daniel and I sent a copy to Kevin, to my brother, and we'll see. It's my story, and it's written honestly and as accurately as I could make it, and it's written with quite a lot of compassion and empathy, and I hope that comes across. But it's the truth, and sometimes the truth is quite ugly. Sometimes it's beautiful.
Do you feel like you had to go back, like, and filter some things after, like, you may have told some stories and then, like, reread and said, okay, I don't want to.
There's very little.
Someone, or did you just kind of?
Very little that is filtered, and there's very little that has been left out. There's a couple of things that have been left out, and I didn't have to think twice about leaving them out. I'm not going to tell you what they are. Of course. That's why they were left out. But there's very little of that. It's pretty much a complete story, I think. Certainly from my point of view. So, yeah. Close the Pandora's box now.
Thanks, Nick.